Early history, the First Lighthouse. The Pharos of Alexandria in Egypt is the most well-known early example of the lighthouse concept, which dates back to ancient times. The Pharos, one of the 7 wonders of the ancient world, was constructed when Ptolemy II ruled in 280 BCE. It was a masterpiece of engineering and architecture, rising to a height of about 100 meters. A square base, a central cylindrical part, and a smaller tower on top comprised the lighthouse's 3-tier design, which was built using huge blocks of light-colored stone. At its height, light was emitted by a burning fire and projected across great distances using polished bronze mirrors. The Pharos represented Alexandria's importance as a center of trade and knowledge while guiding ships safely to the busy port. Other ancient civilizations also employed crude navigational aids. Yet the Pharos is seen as the earliest iconic lighthouse. Along beaches and ports, the Greeks and Romans erected smaller lighthouses and beacon towers, employing fires or torches to direct mariners to safety or warn them of potentially hazardous rocks. Although not as imposing as the Pharos, these buildings signaled the early adoption of lighthouse technology. The contribution of the Romans. The design and construction of lighthouses were greatly advanced during the Roman Empire. Their engineering prowess produced strong, useful constructions, many of which lasted for generations. Located in present-day A Coruña, Spain, the Tower of Hercules is a prominent example. Roman engineering expertise was demonstrated in the construction of the oldest lighthouse still in use today, which dates back to the 2nd century CE. Lighthouses were positioned strategically along important marine routes to allow safe passage, and the Romans used stone and concrete in their construction to ensure longevity. The Romans created mechanisms to run lighthouses in addition to the actual buildings, frequently assigning specialized keepers to supervise operations and keep the fire going. The organized lighthouse authorities of succeeding centuries were modeled after this organizational strategy. Medieval times. Decline and survival. Early medieval Europe saw a drop in lighthouse building and maintenance after the fall of the Roman Empire. The necessity for such infrastructure was lessened by the unstable political environment and the decline in maritime traffic. Nonetheless, some areas, particularly those on the Mediterranean coast, still had operational Roman lighthouses that were cared for by monks or local government. Due to the Pharos history and Roman customs, lighthouse construction continued to be a tradition in the Islamic world. Beacon towers were built by coastal communities in Spain, the Middle East, and North Africa to facilitate trade and military navigation. Maritime navigation revives during the Renaissance. Lighthouse construction saw a resurgence during the Renaissance due to a growing interest in marine exploration and trade. During this time, improvements in shipbuilding and navigation highlighted how crucial accurate coastline markers are. Lighthouses were purchased by European countries, especially those with burgeoning maritime empires such as Portugal, Spain, and the Netherlands, in order to protect their expanding fleets. The invention of glass-enclosed lights was one notable development at this time. By shielding the fire from the wind and rain, these lanterns made the light more steady and noticeable. Furthermore, early lens tests started to increase the beam's strength and range. The golden age of lighthouses, the 18th and 19th centuries. The Industrial Revolution and developments in optical technology propelled the golden period of lighthouses in the 18th and 19th centuries. Countries with long coastlines, like the US, France, and Britain, started large-scale lighthouse construction projects to help their growing maritime sectors. Lighthouse design was transformed in 1822 when French physicist Augustin-Jean Fresnel created the Fresnel lens. The range and brightness of lighthouse beams were significantly increased by this novel lens, which focused and magnified light using concentric rings of prisms. Older, less effective techniques were replaced by Fresnel lenses, which were used globally. During this time, lighthouse building also changed, with notable advancements in engineering methods and materials. Taller and more robust structures were made possible by the replacement of stone and wood with cast iron and steel. As foundation-laying skills improved, it became possible to build offshore lighthouses on sandbanks or reefs. Two notable examples are the Eddystone Lighthouse in England, which underwent multiple modifications beginning in the late 17th century, and the Bell Rock Lighthouse in Scotland, which was finished in 1811. Organized lighthouse management in the United States began in 1789 with the founding of the United States Lighthouse Service. This federal organization was in charge of building, maintaining, and manning lighthouses along the nation's growing coastline. The United States had one of the world's largest and most sophisticated lighthouse networks by the middle of the 19th century. 20th century automation and modernization. Lighthouses saw substantial alterations in the 20th century as a result of changes in marine activities and technical breakthroughs. Traditional oil lamps were replaced with electrification, which produced a more dependable and potent light source. The necessity for full-time lighthouse keepers started to disappear as automated techniques made remote operation and maintenance possible. Although the usage of lighthouses decreased with the introduction of radar, GPS, and other contemporary navigational technologies, these buildings continued to be significant as backup systems and reminders of nautical history. While some lighthouses were deactivated and kept as historical sites, many made the switch to automated beacons. Today's lighthouses, keepers of the past and present. Lighthouses are still used today as both practical navigational aids and cultural icons. Even if they are no longer as important in contemporary sea navigation, they are still essential in some places, especially those with difficult terrain or heavy traffic. Due to their historical and architectural significance, several lighthouses have been converted into museums, tourist destinations, or private homes. Through marine heritage programs and preservation efforts, nations all around the world pay tribute to the legacy of lighthouses. These famous buildings are maintained in the U.S. by groups like the U.S. Lighthouse Society and the National Park Service. In the same vein, the Tower of Hercules and other lighthouses have been designated as World Heritage Sites by UNESCO. The first nation to build lighthouses. Depending on how the term is defined, one can determine which nation constructed lighthouses first. Egypt is credited with constructing the first real lighthouse when looking at colossal buildings like the Pharos of Alexandria. But if you count smaller, working beacon towers, ancient Greece and Rome also had a significant influence on the construction of lighthouses. No matter where it came from, the idea of guiding light expanded around the world, influencing maritime history and bridging cultures via a mutual dependence on these timeless representations of inventiveness and safety.